All right, let's talk about the neuroscience of depersonalization and derealization. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a study that gives us a glimpse into the particular brain regions that are affected that lead to depersonalization, which is feeling detached from your body, and derealization, feeling detached from the material world. People oftentimes ask me, how do you know what you know? And one of the reasons is because I read a lot of studies, I read a lot of articles, I read a lot of books by people who do a lot of research on things like trauma, anxiety, as well as depersonalization, realization. And it's very difficult to read these writings because they're typically done by people that have no desire to translate their findings into a simple language that the everyday Joe can understand. So you've got academic literature, and then you've got kind of a popular audience, right? And the academics are notoriously bad at translating their findings to where everyday people can understand them. So I just read this research, and I usually have to look up like 30 words, and I read it again and again and again. And eventually I'll get a basic understanding. And then what I do for my clients is I try to come up with very simple analogies or examples that kind of explain what I found. And so that's what I'm going to be doing with this, and kind of looking into this study and giving you some basic examples. So here's the citation for the study. It's called Depersonalization, a Selective Impairment of Self-Awareness. And here are the three findings that I want to focus on. This study did find a number of different things, but this is what I think is the most relevant to you and what I think you'll find the most interesting. So they did neuroimaging. They looked at people's brains who were experiencing depersonalization, realization, and they found two things. Number one, there was an overactivation of the prefrontal cortex. Number two, there was an underactivation of the anterior insula. And because of that, because the prefrontal cortex is too busy and the anterior insula isn't working like it should, it basically changes how you feel. It changes your experience of your body as well as the material world. Now, you may be asking, what the heck is a prefrontal cortex and what the heck is an anterior insula? I'm glad you asked. So the prefrontal cortex, it is basically your thinking brain. Let's call it the thinker. It controls emotions. It kind of helps you stay calm. It helps you make decisions. It helps you plan ahead. It also helps you focus your attention. It also handles complex thinking. What about the anterior insula? Well, let's call this the feeler. So this is responsible for something called interoception, which is the experience of the embodied self. And if you follow my content, you probably hear me talk about this a lot, and especially with my clients. I've mentioned this word literally dozens of times every time that I talk to them, because this is paramount for us to get you out of these symptoms, is getting you back in your body, experiencing your embodied self, and befriending your body. But the anterior insula is responsible for helping you feel emotions, having body awareness, connecting feelings and thoughts. You experience things via your anterior insula, and then your prefrontal cortex translates that information, or translates that experience into words, into language. So if you said, hey, I feel tired, that's you experiencing the physical effects of being tired via your anterior insula, and then your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain, translated that into language that you could express. Also, empathy helper. So with depersonalization, you basically feel detached from your body. And with derealization, everything feels fake and dreamlike. People describe it as a wall of glass between them and reality. Everything feels very colorless, very dull. Some people say it feels like they're high. Some people say that it feels like they're living in a dream world. There's all kinds of, analogies and metaphors that are used, but it's very difficult to describe. But here is most likely why it's happening. Whenever the prefrontal cortex works too hard because there's overwhelming stress, it basically ends up dulling the activity of the anterior insula, right? Your prefrontal cortex is trying to lower your emotions but it ends up working too hard to the point that it blocks interoception, the experience of the embodied self. And when you experience your body without interoception, you're experiencing it from the outside in. And thus, you feel out of body. You look at your hands and they feel extremely foreign to you. Why? Because you're used to experiencing your arms and your hands with interoception, with the experience of the embodied self, because normally your anterior insula is working as it should. And then you look around you and the world feels fake and dreamlike. It feels dull. It feels colorless. It feels like there's a wall of glass between you and reality. You look at people and they feel like strangers. Why? Because you're experiencing the world without interoception, without the anterior insula doing its job. You're not experiencing an emotional connection to the world anymore. And so that is most likely what's going on. Okay. Overactivation of the prefrontal cortex, trying to blunt your emotions because you're really, really stressed out. Particularly, you've reached a state of overwhelming traumatic stress, and underactivation of the anterior insula, which is what allows you to experience interoception, the experience of the embodied self. And you're experiencing your body and the material world devoid of your normal emotional experience. That's it, guys. It's really that simple. There are other brain regions that are most likely involved in this. I didn't want to bring them in just because I wanted to keep it quite simple. And again, I want to be clear, there's not enough research on depersonalization realization. So unfortunately, it's like, we're just going to be able to speak to generalities. But this study was pretty conclusive about this, pretty eye-opening, and it is very interesting. And so that's why one of the number one things that I do with my clients is I help them start to experience their embodied self again. And it takes a lot of work because their prefrontal cortex is actively working to keep them technically somatically dissociated. So somatic means body, dissociate means to separate. Their brain is working overdrive. The prefrontal cortex is working overdrive to reduce the activation of the anterior insula. And so it takes a lot of work to get back into their body. But once they do, they can start to release the tension, adrenaline, emotion that is keeping them so stressed out that the prefrontal cortex is having to blunt activity in the anterior insula. And eventually there's so much calm in the body that the prefrontal cortex can calm down, and there is a restoration of their normal emotions. They're able to feel safely embodied, and thus they're able to recover. So that's one of the things. Then, of course, co-regulation. You guys hear me talk about that a lot. It's where you're calm by being around somebody that creates hope in you and really gives you hope and is there to guide you as you are getting back into the body. And it's a war to get back in the body, again, because of this dynamic that's happening with the prefrontal cortex working too hard and the anterior insula working too little. But it is achievable. I did it. I've been helping people do it for the last 6 years. And once you can be safely embodied, your prefrontal cortex will go back to its normal degree of functionality. It'll go back to helping you control your emotions, make decisions, plan ahead, attention, complex thinking will be restored. And also you'll be able to have normal functionality of the anterior insula, which means you'll be able to easily feel your emotions. You'll feel connected to your body. You'll feel connected to your thoughts. And it's a beautiful thing. Okay. So that is it. I hope that helped you. And if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and share this. If you have anybody that you know that is experiencing depersonalization realization and they just can't find anybody that can really explain the neuroscience of what's going on or how to get out of this, this would be a good kind of starter video for them just to get some hope and a basic understanding of what's going on. And also make sure to hit like, comment below if you have any questions, and there will be many more trainings like this to come where we will go over different studies and what they have concluded about these symptoms. That's it. Hope you have an awesome day.